Good morning, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development and the House Committee on Corrections and Institutions. This is a joint hearing on workforce, people that are incarcerated, how we're training them before they re-enter life outside the facility, so that they are on the path to having a skill that they can become employed. I think we all know that people that have job skills, that have a job, are less likely to offend again. So this is for House Commerce. This is an important program. I'm sure it is for you, Madam Chair.
Yes, and I really appreciate this joint meeting. I'm chair of the House Corrections and Institutions Committee, and we've been working for a number of years to help folks who are reentering from our incarcerated facilities. And we know that for folks to be successful when they reenter the community after serving a sentence, they really need three things: stability in housing, stability in treatment, and stability in employment. And we've worked in the past trying to connect at least the employment piece, because when folks are incarcerated, there is a real opportunity there to work with folks to develop their skills, whatever their skills may be, and to really connect with our labor force. There's some moving pieces within corrections that we can do, particularly when someone is re-entered the community on different statuses for corrections and are being supervised by the local parole board, local P&P office, our field services office under DOC. There's sometimes conflicts in terms of when a person needs to go to work, but when they have to check in with their probation parole officer, or when they need to get treatment, it conflicts with their jobs. So we really need to work out those technicalities. We really need to work in terms of when someone is incarcerated, what connections we can make for that person. So I really appreciate the work. I know Department of Labor's done this. I know DOC's worked on this, and I really appreciate the collaboration and how we can get started. Should we introduce members of our committee? So I'm Alice Emmons, Chair of Corrections and Institutions Committee.
James Gregoire, Vice Chair of Corrections and Institutions Committee.
Sean Sweeney, representative from Shelburne and St. George. I am the clerk.
Joe Luno, St. Albans City, member Corrections.
Brian Minier, South Burlington, also Corrections.
Troy Hedrick, Burlington, correct.
Troublemaker.
Trevor Wentworth, Corrections.
Mary Morrissey, Bennington, Corrections.
Judy Galfetti, Berrytown, Corrections.
Will Greer, Bennington, Corrections Institutions.
Connor Casey.
There you are.
My failure, Corrections. I'm a little mad at my committee, so I shut over there.
We have too much fun.
I'm
in Commerce and Economic Development.
Herb Olson, Commerce, Economic Development.
Dave Bosch from Rutland 2, Commerce Economic Development.
Abby Duke, Burlington, Commerce.
Emily Karras Duncan, Whitingham, Commerce.
Monique Priestley, Bradford, Commerce.
Kirk White, Bethel, ranking member, Commerce.
Hi, Edie Branning, representing Jericho and Underhill, Vice Chair of Commerce and Economic Development.
And I'm Mike Markoff from Coventry, and Chair of House Commerce. And so good morning. Thank you all for joining us. Commissioner, thank you, Deputy Commissioner, as well. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to your testimony.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. My name is Kendall Smith. I'm the Commissioner for the Vermont Department of Labor, and we are really excited to be here today with our partners at DOC, as well as the Community College of Vermont, who will be joining. From the Department of Labor, we have a good representation of our team that's actively engaged in this partnership work behind me, and you'll get a chance to hear from a few of them. We have 11 regional offices around this And each of those regions that are represented here today have a correctional facility in their district or region, so to speak, that we've been actively partnering with. So we wanted to raise up some of those anecdotal examples from the past year or so of activity that we're doing, that we're working to expand to the other areas of the state as well. I agree with everything Chair Emmons said to start us off, as well as Chair Marcotte. Thank you. And then in terms of the kind of testimony order and narrative that we've lined up for you all is I'm about to hand it off to the Deputy Commissioner for DOC to talk a little bit of background. Then we'll hear from President Joyce Judy and Brian O'Connor from the Community College of Vermont around education, and then how that then links in with what we're doing at the Department of Labor for when people exit incarceration around reemployment support services. So there's going to be a lot of musical chairs. We do think we have this smoothed out amongst ourselves, but just you're gonna see some musical chairs happening starting now. So
We could put more
I will be
chairs up
back.
here.
Hand it off to DOC. And I don't know if anyone else is gonna join.
Yeah, I'll try maybe help me out. Program Service Director overseeing vocational training, education, risk intervention services. I think that's enough. I'm Kristen Calvert, Deputy Commissioner of Corrections. Really glad to meet some new faces and see some familiar ones. I'm going to give you a very high level overview of DOC for folks who aren't familiar. We have 6 probation and parole offices throughout the state, 12 probation and, six facilities, 12 probation and parole offices. We do have 1 out-of-state contracted facility in Mississippi. DOC is housed within the Agency of Human Services, and we are a unified system, which is rather unique nationally. And that means that we oversee pretrial detention, detainees, prisons, traditional sentence individuals, and community supervision, so probation and parole, furlough, and home detention as well. So I'll pass it to Randy.
Sure. Good morning, everyone.
Can give an overview of the risk services.
Thank you for time this morning to kind of go over everything. So I'm really excited. It's my first time actually writing testimony here, so thank you. As Deputy Commissioner stated, I am the new Risk Intervention Services Director. Some of you may have known Kim Bushy in the past. I have taken over for her, so I have some really big shoes to fill. So I'm really excited for that opportunity, really nervous for that opportunity as well. So Risk Intervention Services with the Department of Corrections, really 3 pieces. We have the health services side, which looks at our behaviors, health services side, which really looks at the criminal behavior individuals, like our violent crime, our sexual reoffending, things of that matter. I'm not going to spend really any time on that today. Really, my focus today is our community high school as well as our vocational programs that are going on. Some of you may know or may not know that we do have a community high school that runs within our facilities across the state, providing education services to our incarcerated individuals. We have a number of teachers, boots on the ground, who provide numerous classes. It's an accredited independent high school, recognized by NEASC, which is the New England Association for Schools and Colleges. It's also acknowledged as accredited with the Vermont State Board of Education. So again, we provide a lot of education, a lot of services to our individuals. We kind of meet them where they are, because I think the average reading level for a lot of our individuals is about 5th grade. So we have to work really hard to kind of get them to a point where they're successful when they leave our doors. So very, driven, embedded in that is also our vocational programs. So we have our educational side, our behavioral health side, and our vocational side. So our vocational services really offer career assessment, career exploration, career counseling, vocational training, workforce readiness, transition release planning, and employment services. A lot of this is going to be touched on later by the group behind me, which I'm really excited to hear as well. We really figure out how the individual needs services through an assessment called Work Keys. So they're not just coming to us and we're like, oh, we think you need X, Y, and Z. It's a really driven assessment that's recognized by a country that measures foundational workplace skills. So math, literacy, writing, there's an intake process, interview process, a whole bunch of things that go into it. So again, it's not very willy-nilly, we're going to decide what we're going to do. It's very driven by the assessments that we have out there.
Can I interrupt and just ask, is this just for sentence folks, or is it also for folks who are detainees?
It's for sentence folks.
Just for sentence folks. So of our incarcerated population on the male side, not quite half of our incarcerated population are detainees.
Correct.
On the women's side, more than half of our incarcerated women are detainees. So that just kind of puts it in perspective in terms of what we're doing with the folks.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. It's very important. We target skill development to address employment barriers, maladaptive workplace behaviors and attitudes. We have a lot of individuals who can get out into the community and they can get jobs. They're very good at getting jobs. But something may upset them on the job and they'll quit, or something else will happen in their life and they'll leave it to go to another job or find another opportunity. So our real goal is finding careers for individuals. And that might not mean being a manager or being a leader or something, but just the next step in their progression of being employed within the community. We provide vocational training to include credential services such as OSHA, ServSafe, it's up on the screen right now. Construction and flagging, those are all very needed services within the state of Vermont. So we give them this head start before they get out into the community as well. And then, like I said, work uses an opportunity to look at the readiness of the individual. I think it's also important to point out we have the plate shop still running up at Northwest. People just look at that as, you know, an opportunity to engage in kind of like a factory service. It's not. There's a lot that goes into it in terms of inventory and looking at billing and packaging and shipping and all those things that go about it. So it's a bigger process than just the plate itself, which is.
We're talking license plate.
Yes, that is correct.
Just to be clear, where our license plates are made.
Yes, absolutely. So again, those are our 2 point tips. Question.
This will surprise nobody on my committee, or probably the two of you. Can you give me a range of the wages that the folks who are making license plate?
I don't know.
We can send this to you. Yeah, I just looked at it, but I don't want to misspeak, so we can send that.
I think you know.
They're not minimum wage.
It's a rhetorical.
No, absolutely not
What's
minimum
the
wage.
cap?
No, yeah, I think the overall cap for any opportunity in the system is a daily rate of, it's $9.
What does that transfer to
Per
an
day.
hourly rate?
I don't know that calculation,
About
but it's
20?
very, very small
About 20 maybe for the
Yeah.
cap?
Yep.
But they start at 25 cents an hour?
for some jobs, yeah.
Thank you.
So that's kind of like a big 10,000 foot overview of kind of the 2 sides I really want to focus on, the community high school and the vocational side. We do run into some barriers, which I think is important to point out. Lack of space in the facility. Our facilities are old, our footprints are really old. And it's tough to build in different services into a footprint that's been around for 20, 30, 40 years before there was Wi-Fi, before internet was up and running like it is now. So we get creative, we work around it. However, it's tough to do it sometimes with some of our spaces, such as chain bin, which we run into issues all the time with that facility. I think this is probably the best point to lead into our work with CCV. I think I kind of want to hand it up to them. Unless there's any other questions.
Just
Absolutely.
Sorry, before you do that. We have adult education out, you know, if you're not incarcerated, and we have high school education. And I'm just curious why what is the difference with the community high school versus an adult education focus? How does, and what decisions went into making that?
I can give that. The history for the Community High School of Vermont was, it started probably back I think it started during the 90s, maybe even the 80s. A lot of folks were coming in without a high school diploma. So it was a way for them to achieve a accredited high school diploma, not a GED, but a high school diploma while they were incarcerated. Over time, that has changed, where we have seen folks now coming in more with high school diplomas, but not at that level. Community high school is a requirement for folks. The way it was set up, if they did not have a high school diploma, they were required up to the age of 22, 23, because we worked through that. They had to be in the Community High School of Vermont. And that's still the case, but we're not seeing as many folks that don't have a high school diploma. We have looked into why can't we hook up with a local high school or whatever? Many of the folks who are incarcerated have a lot of issues with their local high school. That's why they didn't complete. That's why they failed. So to put them back in that environment is very detrimental. Adult basic ed, you get a GED. Our goal was that they would get a high school diploma. So that was the whole structure of community high school in Vermont.
Yeah, okay. So it feels like we're separating this community out of perhaps what might be best practice education, the way we're looking at education in the rest of the state. And that's a different conversation for a different day, but I just want to flag that and I'll look at it a different.
Absolutely. And thank you for presenting that. It's important to know when we do look at individuals who are going through high school, they are pulling records from multiple high schools. To the point of chair of like they have had issues across the board in multiple high schools. So it is important.
Thank you.
Good questions?
Yeah, and well, so the first one is just housekeeping. Do you want us to raise a hand and go through the chairs? How do you want us to?
Yeah.
Through the alphabet.
Yeah. I can take care of us, we can take, yeah. Brian.
I'm just wondering if either of you can color any more of the Wi-Fi issue, because our committee worked on it a bit last year, sort of where things are, what the holdups are, and sort of what opportunities are already present and what's being held back by the lack of robust Wi-Fi.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi efforts go back many years at this point. I think right in the tail end of COVID, we did a heat mapping in our facilities for ADS using our own funds and submitted that information to ADS to kind of get the kind of quotes and what the cost would actually be for original installation and then ongoing network access. That was originally submitted as a capital bill item, but then flooding came, and so prioritization changed. Then we attempted to get funding, and I think you all supported through a memo to the broadband access, the BEAD board, I think it's referred to, and that effort was not successful. So this year we're strategizing, and I think that board is getting some new guidance on how to spend the remaining funds that they have. It's my understanding that they previously prioritized like digital equity, access and education and not necessarily infrastructure for us. But I think we are considered one of the rural low access systems. So we're going to keep trying and definitely would look to you all for your thoughts and ideas on that, see how we can make it successful this third time around.
What was the dollar amount? A couple million?
I think it was 4 total, but that included some ongoing operational costs as well.
Just getting back to the detainees, do detainees have access to the vocational educational programming at all?
They don't, and that's purely driven on the length of stay. I think the average length of stay is 3 days. And so there's nothing we can really provide for them in that length of time. And usually casework for them goes through their public defender or some kind of attorney. And so we're not offering at the moment those kinds of services.
Okay, do they have access to like wraparound services like as they exit?
No, for the same reason, you know, unless they become sentenced through that process, and then certainly we would pick that up. Thank you. Yeah.
So one other question. You mentioned that there's a plate shop in St. Albans. So if you're incarcerated there, you have an opportunity to work, but if you're incarcerated anywhere else in the state, there is not an opportunity to work?
That's the only site that has a plate shop, but the other areas have different vocational opportunities, like cleaning and coaching, laundry, things of that nature.
Thank you.
What's an impediment for a lot of this is lack of space. And then the other impediment, we used to have the Vermont Correctional Industries. And that was based in Newport. And we did a lot of woodworking, building bookcases, desk furniture, office equipment. That was very successful. And that was back in the 90s. But what was starting to happen, private industry was putting some pressure on the state because the bids that came out from VCI were much lower than a private company. So there were restrictions put on. And over time, VCI and the workshop just went away. So we're really just, and we used to do road signs. We used to make a lot of the road signs that you would see. The municipalities could buy, or the state would put up on state highways. That's gone away. We used to do farming at the Windsor facility. That's gone away. So right now, the only space we have in a facility is up in St. Albans to make license plates. In the other facilities, some of that is internally done within the programs that you have just defined, but it's within current space in the facility. It could be at the library, it could be in the cafeteria, it could be in the common room. That's where it's all coming.
How are things now, at probation and parole, and someone, I know there was an issue years ago, we really had a lot of discussions about probation officers going to people's work, pulling them out, that was causing a lot of disruptions for the businesses. And I know one in my area has taken a lot of people exiting the facility. But it became such a disruption that they stopped doing that. And so have we figured out how we can keep people employed and still probation can still function the way they need to function?
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't been made aware of specific examples of that still happening, so I can give an assumption that we're working with employers to, have flexibility in when we're visiting or our own hours to accommodate folks so they are able to remain employed. And I think there's a certain amount of stigma when your PO walks into your place of employment. And so it can be kind of mentally draining, I think, for folks as well. So we're open to the conversation of making that a more formal process. But I do think that folks are being much more flexible with it.
Yeah, I mean, I can add to that. I just left probation parole in Burlington. I was the assistant district manager there for 4.5 years. It brought probation parole. Exactly as the deputy commissioner said, we worked around, we found ways to not cause an issue to the business itself, but we still need to do our job. So we just came up with creative ways to do that, whether it's to meet somebody down the road or after they got out of work, or using our second shift individuals to check on them when I got home later that day. So it didn't have to be at their business.
That's good to
We
hear.
realize how much of it that inconvenience is to the business owners.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Still hang out,
Yeah.
so other questions pop up, but I think we'll turn it over to
CCB. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, guys.
So thank Chair Moffat and Chair Enlund for giving us this opportunity. I'm Joyce Judy. I serve as the president of the Community College of Vermont.
I'm Brian O'Connor. I'm the Director of Corrections Education at CCB.
So thank you for the opportunity to come and share a little bit about what we're doing in the corrections field. And why I like to come and talk about this program is because we're not coming to ask you for any money, because we have funds and we figured out how to make it sustaining, self-sustaining, and so we can share what we're doing. And I think it really complements. We work really closely with corrections and with Department of Labor to really make this program work. And I'm gonna give a little overview of CCD, a little overview of our corrections program, and then Brian will really give you the details and a little color in terms of how it really works on the ground. But just sort of level set, just as I think most of you know about CCD, but just in case you don't, CCD is one of the two institutions that make up the Vermont State Colleges. We are separate but complementary institutions. And at CCD, and people always check out my hands, and I do, I often think of ourselves as the open end of the funnel. We really try to help people who, for many, who never imagined they could go to college, get started. And so many of our students, it was fun this morning. I just talked with a student here who's in his last year EVM. He started at CCD, and he's doing an internship here this semester. And it's always fun to connect with people and see what they do. Our students go on to do amazing, amazing things. CCV, just as a point, CCV is the second largest college in Vermont, next to the University of Vermont. But we serve 10,000 Vermonters in a given year. And that's been pretty steady over the course of several years. Our spring semester is going to start in less than 2 weeks, and we'll be offering between 600 and 700 courses to Vermonters throughout the state. The important thing, I think, from a CCV perspective and from your work is about 95% of our students are Vermonters. And even the ones who consider themselves out of state are people who have moved here, generally speaking, and just haven't been here for a year. So we are serving people who are here in Vermont and they're going to be here in Vermont. And, we serve just a huge diversity of students. This semester, we have 400 veterans and military connected students, for example. We have students who are 17 and we have students who are 75. People who come to us who have never thought they could go to college, and then people with a master's degree who are looking, they may have been hurt on the job, they want to repurpose. We also see a lot of younger students who, more and more younger students are starting with us because they can do their first 2 years, essentially their first 2 years at quite a significant savings, and then transfer. We have transfer pathways to everybody. Because there's not a college in New England, I would say, that doesn't have capacity in their junior and senior years. And so schools are looking for students who could fill those gaps. And so community college students in general, and CCB is one of those, our students are a hot commodity for 4-year institutions. Another interesting fact about our students are more than 80% of them work full-time. And so they really are, it's quite humbling and quite sobering to see what our students do to access their education. So now flipping to our corrections work. Why did we get involved in corrections work? Two reasons. One, our work is really about providing access to education to Vermonters, and any pool of Vermonters who can benefit by continuing their education is something that we always are looking to address. And so we began to think about all the people who are incarcerated and they're going to be released, and the majority of them are going to be released into Vermont communities. And how do we make sure that we can, for Vermont and for them as individuals, how do we help them become productive citizens? And also we, in our conversations with corrections, realize, and all of you know, that Vermont, like the nation, has a really high recidivism rate. But I often think about myself, if I committed a crime and I went to prison and spent time there, and then you release me back into my local community with my same group of friends and same structure, why am I not going to reoffend? And so I think that's where education is one of the pieces that can make a difference. And how do we, so for us, our work is, how do we help people have hope? And how do we help them, provide them with some skills and for them to rethink who they are as they transition, both within in the facility, but then more importantly, when they leave. And so that was really our work, is to really think about, we're not going to change the recidivism rate on a dime, but can we contribute to, if we could change it by a few percentage points, that would be huge. Huge for them, their families, and Vermont in general. So I think so in 2016, we actually started a conversation with corrections and, what could we do together to address this? And then we pursued some philanthropic support. The J. Warren and Lois McClure Foundation became a big funder for us early on. And we ran our first class in Northern in 2018. And since that time, our program has grown and grown and grown. But there's been some significant pieces that have helped it grow. Although there was one significant piece that sort of put it on pause for a while. So, we started in 2018, and in 2019, there's a program at the federal level now called Second Chance Pell, where you can apply for colleges can apply to provide training and education to people who are incarcerated, and they can be eligible for Pell Grants. And that's a way to really make this self-sustaining, because Pell Grants will, for the majority of students who are incarcerated, they qualify for a Pell Grant, and that helps to cover their tuition. So that's how some of this works financially. And so we were awarded that designation. And we were supposed to start it in July of 2020. So as we all know, we were all ramped up to start it in July of 2020, and then COVID, and then the lockdown. And, I think gratefully so, our facilities, prison facilities were locked down much longer than most other places for very good reasons. And so the program was really on pause for a couple of years. But then finally in 2023, we were able to really launch it. But in the meantime, we also were awarded a $4.5 million congressionally directed spending earmark, championed by Senator Sanders, to support this program. This gave us a huge runway to really think about and develop a program that was pretty creative. And one of the things that has really set this apart, and Senator Sanders feels like this is a national model, and I'm hoping that we can figure our way to continue this. There were really two threads to our prison education program. One is to provide education and training to people who are residents. And the second is to provide educational opportunities for people who work for the Department of Corrections. Because one of the things that we heard over and over and over again is that, there's always a fair amount of resentment between particularly prison guards and people who are incarcerated, and they're getting opportunities to take college courses. And I actually had a prison guard say to me, what do I have to do? To get a college education? Do I need to commit a crime? And that is troubling. And so we were able to, with our support from Senator Sanders, really develop two tracks. One is providing courses and for inmates, but also to provide educational opportunities for people who work in corrections. And we were able to expand that to people who are in corrections and their families. Because so many of the people who are working in the facility, as we know, employment's a challenge there, and they're working 60 and 70 hours, and they don't have time. They said to us, we would like to access it, but we don't have time given a schedule. But now that they can, their children or their spouse could take advantage of it, that has really changed the sort of, it's really smoothed out some of the resentment in the program. And so it's been pretty effective, and we are approaching the end of our funding through with the congressional direct spending pipeline. But thanks to Brian's good work, we are in line, we think, for a very significant grant from a national funder who really thinks this program that will allow us to continue some of the special things. We would continue it anyway, but to really expand the program, getting some additional funding has been really key for us. And this, if we are awarded this grant, and we'll know within a couple months, the focus will be a lot on transitional services, which I know this group is very interested in, because right now we have really, with our program as it's grown, we have really been working to try and figure out how to make sure that as students transition out, that they have the supports. And that's one of the things that I feel like is a real benefit to having CCD involved in this, because we are throughout the state and we are serving. And so when a person is released, and we had some release wonderful successes, they're small, but it's wonderful that when they are released back into their community, one of the first things we encourage them to do is to get hooked up with an advisor at CCD. And that just that little change and just a different orientation can make a huge difference. And so, it's been very this program has grown, but as you heard before, one of the limits of our program to be able to grow internally is lack of space. Lack of space, and also it's a challenge for staffing, because if they're short of staff, how do you make sure, even though we have our faculty are in a class, there doesn't have to be someone in the class, but they have to be close by. And so so staffing, but I would say space is the biggest thing. But we're serving over 100 students every semester, between 100 and 150. And that's 10% of Vermont's incarcerated population. It's pretty amazing. And our faculty continue to tell us how the students are just like sponges. They always are so grateful. They always do all their work. They always, our faculty, if you do it one time, if you teach in a facility one time, you're hooked. People really find it such a satisfying thing. I want to leave my piece with just 2 or 3 quotes that just came in on a student survey that we had that I think really tell why this program is so important. So this is a huge piece of my release program. I believe earning a degree will help me when I am. Another, it's changed my life. I feel so much better about my opportunities to enter my community and now get into a career. And the final one is can get you. It's all about going home and living a productive life. Those are exact words, exact quotes from students that we're serving. So it's pretty life-changing. So Brian, over to you.
I'll go into a little bit about what it looks like in the programs, but I was smiling because you're talking about the engagement of students, and there's no cell phones in the classes. So if you're actually teaching one of those classes, just the give and take with the students is something that I miss from when I was in college. It's something we see inside the corrections classrooms that we don't see everywhere else these days. So we work with 4 different populations, and I'll talk briefly about those, and if there's questions, I'm happy to answer those. But one of those populations is the staff at the Department of Corrections. Anytime we can help somebody who's incarcerated, we know that we're kind of alleviating a little bit of stress on that staff. And anytime we can do something to help the staff and the corrections officers, we know we're doing something that's going to help keep the doors open for our students. So it's really, if we're helping the system in any place, we're helping the whole system, and that's something we take really to heart. We offer, I think, about anywhere between 15 and 30 staff that are students at CCB at any point in time, and another 15 or 30 of their family, which is our second population. We also offer workshops to every incoming correctional academy. So the correctional academy is 6 weeks of intensive training before they become correctional officers. We're in there for half day on the 3rd day, just to try to teach them about some situational awareness, some empathy, and to kind of introduce some other skills really early in that experience. So we're kind of throughout the staff and the correctional officer experience as well. We added about 2 years ago, we added the staff family program, which is for spouses and dependent children. That's been very popular and it's about the size of our staff program. A lot of correctional officers can't take advantage of the program, and we do because they work odd hours and don't have time. But they have children or spouses who really can use this in a lot of unique ways. And it's been a very popular program, and I think a very meaningful benefit to the people who work in the facilities. Facilities have a much higher turnover rate than the central office staff does. And so anything we can do to help them, again, helps the whole system, helps post-secondary education. So I think that is one of the pieces that has led us to become what I think is one of the most comprehensive post-secondary correctional educators in the country. We also then offer courses to incarcerated Vermonters, which is the focus of this testimony is today. We are in 4 facilities. We have 11 classes running this semester, and we have over 100 students in any semester that are participating in these classes, over 10% of the sentence population. So our penetration inside those correctional facilities is very high. And we're doing a lot there in order to engage that population. Last semester, we introduced computers with some limited internet access. And so we were able to expand the courses, start offering classes that use academic journals with JSTOR, Microsoft Suite, and Canvas, which is our learning platform that we use. Different, by the way, from the correctional network, which is more of a state network. This is a very, very locked down, very secure network only for students. On that note, we had our first graduate with an associate's degree who completed their credits right before Christmas, right before they were released. So we got to celebrate that. And she has already applied for a part-time job on the team, which is something we try to keep open and make sure that we're getting that voice on our team. So her resume is in, and we're looking forward to interviewing her. It was a great way for us to go into the holiday season. She released on December 26th. The final piece is our reentry program. So we also are offering free classes to anybody who's within a year of release from corrections. So about 2 to 5 students engage in that program each semester. But it's kind of the highlight, that reentry, that 6 months, 2 year after reentry, that feels like when everything comes due and when seeing somebody show up to CCV in business casual clothing, who we only know from the inside, either to get ready for class with me with their advisor. Those are the really important ones to us. So that's our smallest program, but it's one in which anyone that's in that program means a success for us and for what we do. So we're in 4 facilities. We're in Northern, Northwest, Chittenden, and Southern. We're continuing to expand. And we're looking forward to what we're going to do in the future in terms of working more with the reentry, working more with other employers and educators, and hopefully expanding out and helping these learners become workers on the outside.
Do you just want to share about the manufacturing approval?
Yeah.
Because we are very excited about this.
Sure. So in order to use these Pell funds for an education, you have to have a U.S. Department of Education approved as an education plan. It's a lengthy process. And we've had it's called a PEP. We've had a PEP for professional studies for about 2 years now. And this fall, we were approved for 3 more PEPs, including manufacturing. So now we're able to use federal Pell dollars for post-secondary education in manufacturing, which should open up a lot of doors for these students in our facilities. And it's something we're very proud of.
Because one of the things we heard from a lot of folks who were taking classes is when they leave, they would like to get into the manufacturing field and get a job in manufacturing. And in order to be able to teach manufacturing courses, 1, we needed federal approval, and 2, we also needed to be able to use technology. And so we actually have purchased with some philanthropic funds, what are they called?
Skill bosses.
Skill bosses that really mimic CAD, welding, all of those. And we're starting in Northern. And so we'll be able to offer manufacturing courses starting in the fall to this population, which we think will be huge. And there's a lot of pent up interest in those programs. So again, I want, when we talk about technology in a facility, I don't want, if someone said to me, well, they have access to the internet? No, this is a really locked down. These are locked down systems, like it's Canvas, but and we use Canvas as a learning management tool, but it's Canvas for people who are incarcerated. So it's the very managed program. So we're happy to answer questions.
John, and then Troy.
Thanks. It's nice to hear positive news. And how could we help you get into the other facilities?
Yeah, I think that, so without going into too much detail, it's a class size issue because the other facilities are smaller and have a population that's less likely to be there for a long time. Right now, it's hard to put a faculty person in that space for 3 students. I think once we continue to evolve the technology, and I think it's an iterative process in which we have to go slowly, make sure everything's secure, and earn that trust with our students and with BDOC. I think the next step would be being able to have those 3 students at Marble Valley up online with a faculty person and teaching at Northern. So I think that's probably the way that we'll be able to expand there. That's a spooky space, understandably so, because that's going to be connecting students in different facilities. So that's probably the path that of least resistance, but it's one that's going to take some time. So,
Quick follow-up. And I think we're going to talk about the computer access, but are you finding that to be problematic in
yeah, so it needs to be secured. We all understand that access for us, and we're all about access at CCV, means fitting into a correctional system. And that security is really secure to the point that it is very hard to make sure things go through. It's a very, very busy part of our job is making sure, for example, Microsoft licenses get through firewalls. So it's a learning experience for us for the pass-through unit, which is the business application support unit at BDOC, and for our students. But everybody knows that it's sort of a growing and learning experience. And anything we do now will help the students that are there 10 years from now, right? And I think our student body at this point is really cohesive and is patient and is willing to work through those kinks with us. So it's a pain, but it's a necessary one.
Thank you.
Troy?
I have concerns about what happens when your students who are incarcerated move to different facilities, and how disruptive that might be. I'm especially concerned when that happens when some of our Vermonters are moved to our for-profit facility in Mississippi. We recently this summer moved, I think, about 30 more Vermonters to Mississippi. I don't know if any of them were currently taking classes, but how disruptive can that be? Any data on that?
Yeah, it can be disruptive. There was a few that were students, and we're working with corrections in a couple of different ways. One way is if we know a student is going to be moving mid-semester, we're not going to register for them for a class. We want to make sure that they're not put in a position where they have to have a withdrawal in their resume. And others, we're now working with the out-of-state movement team who's doing a review too of anybody who is being moved out of state to add to their checklist. Are they also taking classes at CCV? At the end of the day, we know we can't prevent movement. Some of those things are just going to be above the ability of a post-secondary educator to prevent that. But we're taking steps to mitigate it and to make it so it's a manageable number. I think from my perspective, it's something that has to be mitigated and in order to make sure that we're not setting students up to fail. But it's something that I think we're pretty close to getting it to a healthy spot, and one that I think will be there next semester. But that's a real concern.
Do you have any data on the ones who were recently moved to Mississippi and how far along they were in any sort of?
Yeah, I think there was 3 that were moved out of state mid-semester. But I can go back and look for those numbers and send those to you. And we will always at CCV do everything we can to hold them harmless. So we will go in and we'll work with them, we'll identify them, we'll get their permission to withdraw them from a class and make sure that they are left without a failing grade, or that we're able to drop them before the drop period. So we're going to go in and do everything we can to basically reduce any impact that will have to their academic trajectory. I can follow up.
Thank you.
And I think one of the things that we are grateful, we meet with corrections folks. Well, Brian meets with them all the time, but we also have a quarterly meeting where we sort of discuss bigger issues. And one of the things that they have agreed is that if a student is, if a person is enrolled in a college course, that will be a factor in consideration, whether they move them. It's as disruptive to move from one facility to another as it is from Vermont to another place, because it's all, right now, all the stuff is in person. So they, like we said, we understand a good reason probably why you're moving them, but could you, instead of moving them in November, could you wait till the middle of December? And so I think they're very open to using that as a consideration.
And if I also just may talk a little bit about the other side of the coin, it does happen, but we've also had specifically risk intervention services work to move students from where we had no space available in classes and ship them to Southern State. Before it'll happen again where we did have spaces. So there's movement. Sometimes it's a challenge, sometimes it's a benefit, and it's kind of a reality of the 6 locations in Vermont.
Thank you.
Brian?
This is probably secondary or tertiary to your work and perhaps this hearing, but I'm thinking about your offerings, and it makes sense that most of them are vocational or about reentry. But for folks who are significantly older or in there for a really long time, are there offerings, like maybe you're not interested in Microsoft work, right? Maybe you're interested in poetry or something. Yeah, are there those sorts of offerings too?
Yeah, so it's, we have to get these students, we have to offer classes that move these students towards their degree completion. But if we're offering a class that's a elective, and there's a student who is interested in taking it as a non-degree seeking student, and we have, corrections education funds available for them, we'll enroll them in that class as a non-degree seeking student. So we have a responsibility to our degree seeking students to make sure that we're offering the classes they need to progress towards that degree. But we're CCV inside the facility, we're CCV outside. And so we're gonna do everything we can with the student, regardless of what their situation is, to try to meet them where they are and get them what they're interested in.
And I think going back to your question about what can you do, I think when Chair Emmons is fully aware of this, I think that the challenge, and this is not it's space. We could run a lot more classes in Northern. There's a lot of interest. But we have to manage that because we only have the room, a certain number of time, and it's just a lack of space. It's really full. And that's why I think it was huge, and it was 2 or 3 years in the making to actually get to be able to use of tablets or computers in the fall. That was a heavy lift, particularly on corrections. And that is, that's a first step in really increasing access. But it's all, what's fascinating about this work is you're really marrying two cultures who couldn't be more different. You have a higher education, culture that is pretty left liberal leaning because we believe that education is so important. And corrections, their role is to, the safe and healthy, to protect people who are residents there. And so, it's two cultures with two very different missions. But we've been able to do this, and I think the new commissioner is very supportive of it. Nick Demmel was amazing. And so Vermont has been very lucky with commissioners who believe in, from my perspective, believe in rehabilitation as opposed to punitive. And I think because we talk to our colleagues and counterparts in other states, it's not quite like this.
So I have two questions, and they're very, very different from each other. The first one is, you mentioned supports for folks at post-release. And I'm assuming those are supports so that they continue their education.
That's correct, and we try to do it, and one of the things that we're really looking at, and if we are land this new grant, it will really help us really think much more. Right now, it's just matching them up with resources in the community, matching them up with resources that CPD offers. Are there some additional things?
Is it housing supports? Is it
it's supporting them to be in their academic environment.
Okay.
Just like we do, our students at CTV have food insecurity, housing issues. And so we work really closely with our community partners, but we're not that big.
And then my other question, for folks who are incarcerated, do you find that there are people who have an associate's degree or who want to further their education past an associate's degree, and how do we support them, or are we not there yet?
We're not there yet, but I would say as a general rule, that's right.
Yeah, it's everybody. It's got a very large sort of, cross section of education you'd find in a correctional facility too. We are going to try to meet any student who's interested in being educated with education and try to find the resources for that. That gets tougher the more of an education somebody already has. If you have a bachelor's degree, you're not eligible. Doesn't mean there aren't other funds that we can look into, other financial aid. Because we're just CCV in there, using Pell Funds one way that a student can take part in this education. We are dedicated to making sure that no students left with any sort of bill or balance. So we're not interested in going those directions, but there's a lot of different ways that students can come and join us. Though it gets harder, really, a high school degree, GED, associate's degree, and something different from what we're offering tend to be it's also been registered.
And I would just say that sliver gets smaller and smaller.
So I just have a question logistically, how you offer the courses.
Sure.
do your professors have to go in there physically to offer the course? Though the students have access to the course material on their iPads?
So it depends on the course. We have two different types of courses. We have one that we're calling technology assisted, which is that very limited, highly firewall computer course. And they'll have study halls. So they'll have their course, they'll have 3 hours. And then we have a tutor mentor, which I provide all these services. So well, they're tutored or mentored study hall that has a proctor in there. And they can go and they can use the computers, they can download their articles, they can write. The other courses are completely pencil and paper, like, you know, school in the early 90s. Where we're
70s.
And those are, we do whatever we can to support faculty around that, knowing it's a shift for faculty who are used to teaching with technology now. So, but we'll do what we can to order paper copies of academic journals, get books in there, print materials, but it's the faculty's always in there, the students are always in the class. Even the technology facilitated ones, it's still very analog, because we're leaning on those technologies slowly. So it's in-person classes, in facilities, and actually all of our faculty have to be fully background checked and credentials of BDOC contractors. It's a lengthy process.
So does the lack of Wi-Fi impact you folks at all?
It
Your
does.
ability to offer more courses?
It does. It's something that I think we're used to sort of problem solving around, and the technology has grown without needs to depend on it. And so we'll hopefully continue to do that. You know, we as these students get to their capstone classes of their associate's degrees, the niche needs that they will have in order to complete those degrees will be harder and harder to get in paper on a chalkboard, and we'll need a little bit more. But at this point, the technology growth has kept pace. I think we just hope that it will continue.
Emily?
Just question about your educators. I imagine that teaching folks that are incarcerated takes an extra special kind of skill set to be able to go in and provide service. Are you finding educators that are able to meet that, or do you train your educators to be able to meet that need?
That's a good question. All of our faculty, we have, since CCD started in 1970, 100% of our faculty are part-time. So we hire practitioners from the community, and they have expertise. And then we, as a general rule, we offer a lot of professional development to faculty to help them become good teachers. And so when they're in a facility, we do some additional orientation, because there's the orientation about just the logistics of teaching in a facility. And then there's the logistics of, or just the sort of overall approach in terms of the students that you're going to be seeing in a class. And so there's a lot that goes into it. I will tell you that, you know, as I mentioned earlier, well, first of all, we, as a general rule, do not have put a new CCD faculty into a facility. It's usually people who have taught a lot for us. And, you know, our students, as a general rule at CCD, are just hugely diverse. So faculty are very used to, you know, a 17-year-old and a 70-year-old and everybody else in the middle of the class with a lot of different skills. And so, but what is very interesting with our, you know, I mean, students who are incarcerated are just like you and me. You know, they're really no different, other than, you know, sometimes they might have been incarcerated for 5 or 6 years. So they don't know what's going on in the outside world. But beyond that, they're really, I mean, I visited a lot of the class, and it's quite sobering and incredibly powerful. If anybody, you know, I hesitate to do this, but if there's somebody or a couple somebodies who want to visit sometime, you know, we could probably figure that out, because it is incredibly powerful to go and see. I mean, most students are incredibly skilled, incredibly bright. They just have made some bad choices. Andy Polito, who was Commissioner of Corrections for 11 years, was our dean, left corrections, then left the state, and was our dean of administration for 5 years. Now he's retired and living in Florida. I can't believe he thinks he can retire, but nevertheless. But it was very interesting to me. He taught us a lot about correctional facilities. And he said, you know, I always thought of the prison population as 3 buckets. He said one bucket is you and like you and me, they just made a dumb choice and now they're paying for it. He said the second bucket are people with a lot of structure and a lot of support and a lot of opportunity can become really productive citizens. And then he said there's a third bucket that is really a struggle. They're really difficult to deal with. He said, so I would focus your educational opportunities, and we don't limit it. It's corrections decides whether students can participate or not.
Okay.
But I think that, so option, I would say that, what's more important to me as opposed to, you know, what it's, how do you deal with a really rich and really diverse classroom of students?
One more question.
Yeah.
So for folks that are sentenced that have advanced degrees or are beyond that bachelor, is teaching like a track that they can pursue?
We haven't gone there.
Okay.
Interesting thought, but we have.
Just a fun fact really quickly, Dana Lesperance, who was the director of CHSBT, is teaching his second semester, having retired as CCB faculty at Northern, starting this spring.
Troy?
Just a quick question. Is there anything you need or that would help as you pursue this new grant from the legislature or from these 2 committees? Like would a letter bolster that application in any way?
I'll think on it. I think we're in pretty good shape.
We think we're in good shape, but that's a
I won't
great
say no to
conversation.
that.
Let us know.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Have you talked about the type of personnel requirements on DOC to support this wonderful program?
Yeah, we're aware of the fact that there is there's a small burden placed on DOC staff, particularly around corrections officers at facilities in which their education is in a separate building from the rest of it. So for us, that would be Northern and that would be Northwest. There's a yard there. It takes some extra staff to keep that open if we have people. We're going to be teaching there. Because of that, you know, for Northwest, we actually only teach during the day. So we embed our CCD staff at the same time that the VDOC educators are there. And at Northern, that's really the place that we're asking for some help there, keeping those doors open. So in that case, we're trying to run 3+ classes simultaneously in order to make sure that we're getting a lot out of that. So we know that we depend on correctional officers to keep the doors open. We just try to make sure that we're doing enough good for that system to make it worth that. But it's something we
Sure you will.
Anything else?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Department of Labor.
As we're transitioning, I just want to say President Judy and Brian have been very modest about this program and their effort and just how special it is nationally in terms of this model. And the leadership they have both exerted in a lot of different regional positions and otherwise in terms of trying to help other states understand how to implement similar programs. So it's a great program and they've been very honest about how we compare and the amount of work and time and effort that's gone into it over the years.
And I will say, I co-chair the no.
Morning Commerce Committee, Morning Corrections Committee. My name is Jay Ramsey. I am the Director of Workforce Development at the Department of Labor, which means I'm responsible for all of the employment and training programs, including the operation of our 11 job centers across the state. And I'm going to be holding this chair down while other people cycle through. These are the folks that are experts and that are leading and doing the work in our regional offices with their correctional facilities that we're working with currently. And so, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Cindy Robillard. Happy to be here today. I'm an assistant director with the Workforce Development Division. My focus primarily is supporting a team of 6 program administrators that manage and oversee our federal and state funding to include the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, registered apprenticeship, our business services unit, and a few others, but I think those are the ones that are most relevant to today's conversation.
So I think we have one of our case managers or employment and training consultants joining us online. So they're not all here in the room physically with you, but Christina, if you're there, I'm gonna have you round us up at the end. So I'm gonna only talk for a couple of minutes. I come back to this facility map so that you can see where in the Vermont Department of Labor world, we call them American Job Centers. The American Job Centers are part of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is federal funding. That's what makes us work. And we have 11 job centers across the state. Other states have job centers. Other states receive WIOA funds. So the language that you'll hear me say is a job center. You might also hear people refer to them as offices. But the job center is a place that you can go, access a computer, search for jobs, get help with your resume, get help with your interview skills, and have a case manager and employment and training consultant help you make a connection with an employer if that's what you want, or we can help you explore training options. So if we go to the next slide in the reverse order, thank you, Rowan. I just wanted to kind of raise up 4, I think, overarching goals that encapsulate the work that we do, that we want to do, that we're trying to do in partnership with corrections. One is to prepare Vermonters who are exiting incarceration for a successful return to work and community life. Our part of that is about employment. Second goal is about early access to career guidance, labor market information, and job and training options. You're going to hear us say labor on location. You're going to hear us say hiring events and job fairs. The third bucket that I think our goals fall under is connecting workforce services with education opportunities, including post-release college coursework that you just heard CCB speak so eloquently about. And the fourth category would be strengthening employment outcomes and reducing recidivism. And so some of the stories that you might hear from regional managers today have to do with where the rub lies in that with employers. What gets in the way of people getting a job and keeping a job when they have been formerly incarcerated or their justice involved. So we're gonna move ahead to slide 7. And I'm gonna turn it over to Cindy.
All right, so I think one thing that I would love to just start with, which I'm sure you all are aware, is that we really have 2 customers that we serve in the work that we do. We're working with individuals, all individuals across Vermont to really secure employment, to secure training opportunities, to evaluate what their goals are. And I heard, I think it was Randy say at the beginning, not just help people get jobs, which we do in our job centers, but help them on a path toward a career. So that's really that's one customer. And then our other customer are the business customers. And particularly in recent years, and this is, everybody's aware of this, but there are less people looking for jobs. So, our work has been really focused on listening to businesses, making sure we understand what their needs are, and trying to help them line up with the available workers that there are. So that's why the work with corrections is really, really important, and that's part of that focus. You've already talked about the job centers. 2 core partners that we work very closely with in this work are the adult education providers around the state, and also Hireability Vermont and the Division for Blind and Visually Impaired. And then the other kind of engine behind it all is we have the Vermont Job Link system, which is our job matching database that allows Vermonters to be able to create a profile about themselves, and also to access, and it allows Vermont businesses to be able to post their job openings. It also serves as our case management system. So behind that, our employment and training specialists are keeping records and, keeping notes and enrollment information on the people and the employers that we serve.
And I think the other important part of the work of the employment and training consultants is knowing what the resources are out there in the community to make a referral. Like President Judy said, we're not trying to solve everybody's problem. We're trying to help them with employment and training. And if they need housing or they need referral to reach up, that's training that our staff have, that we make those referrals and we know those partners and we work with those partners. And sometimes we're co-enrolling people. We have our part, they have their part, all with the idea that there's a positive employment outcome and financial stability for that person.
So as we're talking about that, I know a few years ago, the Department of Labor held regional workshops, convening everyone together. I think those were, Cindy, I know you led the one in court. That we found that different regions of the state have different, I think different times or where they all meet together. I think up in the kingdom, there were a lot of meetings, I think at least once a month. Then we found other parts of the state, they might meet once a year. And so is there any progress been made in the regions of bringing everyone together to have these conversations so that everyone, it almost becomes a seamless way of helping people through navigate everything that they need to have, all the supports they need?
I think some of our regional managers would be able to speak to that, so I might put a pin in that for both of you to talk about. But we have the ICAM program, which is with Reach Up, the Individual Career Advancement Network, and that team of managers and staff people and managers from the Department of Labor and our staff meet, and this is really at the individual level. Let's try to problem solve and troubleshoot what's going on for the individual. We don't have these large meetings like the summits, but we do tactical work with partners in each region. And as the State Workforce Development Board has been reseated and the Office of Workforce Strategy is standing itself up, I think those are opportunities again for us to pull people together and say, here are all of the people in this region that do X, Y, and Z, so it can be a little bit more coordinated. But there are some tactical things that happen.
Yeah, because I think, I think just that one time that we had the summits, that we were able to, everyone was able to meet, probation and parole, corrections, adult learning services, all, CCV, all of the supports that are there. And I think everyone was able to learn from each other what services they offered and were able to make inroads that way. And I think, learning that probation and parole, we had conversations that was a real issue, that I think that was taken to heart and things were developed that way. So I think they're valuable, and I hope that we start working towards, convening those again, because
I agree. It helps us all, especially when there's turnover in positions.
Right.
People don't. That.
Sure. So I guess I'll just say that in our job centers, especially post-COVID, our walk-in traffic is not as robust as it has been in maybe distant years. And we have really applied a lot of new strategies to be able to meet people where they are at in the community. And honestly, this corrections work is an example of that. But in addition, our teams are out at local libraries, and we have a center in Albans, and we need to serve people in remote parts of that county. We are out there at different libraries and supporting people. We call it labor on location. It's been really successful, and our staff are able to really meet people where they're at. I talked a little bit about our employer customer. Serving our employer customer has been really at the front of the work that we've been doing. We have developed restructured our systems within our division to have staff in our regional offices who really focus on outreach to businesses. We have a business services manager that coordinates local job fairs and hiring events to just serve the employer customer. You're going to hear a little bit later about, really exciting piece of work around on a job fair in a facility. So that was like the ultimate, and we really did a lot of coordination, collaboration with DOC to pull that off. We also really rely on our referrals. So your point exactly is that if we're around a table with other service providers and sharing, what tools we have in our toolbox, and hearing, and they're hearing, well, I have an individual or someone that I'm working with that could really use the kind of support that you offer. We rely on referrals and to generate good employment plans with people based on those referrals.
I'm sorry, I'm not following the referral thing. Like referrals, who's referring who to what?
So
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Good question.
That's a great question. We receive referrals from partners in the community whose participants are looking for support around employment. So it might be an educational institution, it might be a high school, it might be the Department of Corrections, it might be a probation officer who is working with an individual and seeing that they're continuing to stumble with, making job applications out.
The women's shelter who was working with some women who are escaping bad situations in relationships, and they need to change jobs, or they're referring them to us to make a connection wherever the person wants to go. And then we're going to say, we'll work with you to develop a training plan, but also do you need help applying for food stamps, 3 squares? We're going to help you do that. Or in the reverse, if it comes from 3 squares, they will say the employment part of the work that you have to do with 3 squares is with the Department of Labor. So here's a warm handoff. I know this person, I'm going to call them, or I'm going to walk you down. And that we see that as a referral. It's just the way the system integrates to provide the safety net.
Thanks.
Yeah, I could add just one more example real quick. It's something that we're developing right now in real time, is a partnership with the Office of Child Support to support non-custodial parents that need added support to be able to continue to meet their obligations. We're going to start small in one region of the state, but we're hoping that we'll be able to, receive a referral, do an assessment, learn a little bit about the person, and figure out, what is the path that we need to put this person on to get back to work.
I want to go back to something Cindy was talking about with businesses, right? So the end goal is that people are employed, and in order to be employed, you have to have an employer, someone to pay the wages. We view that work with employers and the way that we talk to them is through the lens of the quality jobs framework. And it's some policy at the federal level. It's policy work that they've been advocating for, even in the Biden administration. And it has to do with pay transparency and access to benefits and time off. And recognizing that people are people and they're coming to you as an employer with all sorts of things in their background. And they're not all going to be able to show up to work in the same way. And if an employer has decided that they're going to shut the door on a particular part of someone's background, in this instance, if they've decided that they don't want to hire someone who's been justice involved, then they're, in our current labor market, they're limiting access to a pipeline of potential workers. That is an employer's decision. They run their business. We're not trying to convince them otherwise. But in the work that the job centers are doing, that our regional managers are doing, we are looking for those employers who will say yes. Those employers who are willing to entertain this idea of taking someone who was just released, that they made a contact while they were still incarcerated, and we're facilitating them out into the community. We want those employers who say, yes, that's the network of willing. Those are the people that we're trying to work with.
So I've got a question on that. So are they also looking at what the person was convicted of? And I'm particularly thinking of sex offenders. That's always been a tough situation in terms of placement of folks, regardless, housing, education, whatever, once they're released. So you picking anything up from employers? Yes, we'll take folks who are reentering the community that have been sentenced, but if it's certain crimes, we're not taking them.
I have heard that, and I'm gonna put a pin for our next guests to be able to tell their stories at the local level. But the one story that I have is that there was an electrician and they were trying to hire, they're looking for workers. And I was inquiring, would you be willing to hire someone who's exiting corrections? And well, no, my customers don't want people in their homes who have this in their background. It didn't matter what it was, but this is just an example of kind of that maybe wasn't the right field for this person to go into. And maybe we should be coaching them to be considering other options just so that they're not limiting themselves.
Sure.
Along those lines, this is a little new to me, but as I was prepping for this testimony, one of the things that was brought to my attention is the Second Chance Act grant through, I think it's, I have it here, hold on. It's Council of State Governments Justice Center. Right, for employers, maybe there's some money available if you hire folks who are coming out of incarceration. Here's some wage support, or have you looked into those sorts of grants at all?
I haven't, I am aware of them. I haven't looked at them.
Yeah. Sure. So hi, I'm Kendall Smith, Commissioner for the Department of Labor. So there are a few things that we have done so far in Vermont. We did the bill, gosh, back in maybe 2015 or 16. So for most employers, you cannot ask on an application if an individual's been incarcerated. You can ask, I believe, in the first or second interview. There are certain occupations where there are federal requirements where you can't have certain criminal convictions on your background, and a fingerprint scanner is required. So there are some federal strings attached to certain jobs. In terms of funding, I am not familiar with the specific program you're referencing, and we will look into it, but we do have some funding support as the Department of Labor, particularly a program called bonding, where we purchase federal bonds, and if a person, I'm going to use, I apologize, like just a very plain speak example. Let's say you've been incarcerated for stealing or embezzlement, and you're interested in applying at a jewelry store, and the jewelry shop owner is a little bit hesitant about employing you based on your background. We can actually apply a bond to that individual and insure them for a certain amount. So let's say they do end up stealing from you, you could recoup $5,000, $10,000. So that's a tool we do have in our toolbox to help support this population's transition into employment, but I'll have to look at the specific act.
Yeah, and I don't know a lot about it either. Like literally this morning, somebody mentioned it to me. Second Chance Act grant program through the Justice.
Look into it. Thank you.
And Jay, I just wanted to flag for our team, we're have about half an hour.
Okay.
This committee on schedule, but
We'll talk fast.
yes.
I have another question though, so hang on, Connor.
Yeah, this is a slight deviation, but I was just hoping for a snapshot, you know, we've got you here and we're talking jobs and we're talking corrections. And just yesterday, you know, in our committee, we were briefed on the 6-7 year crisis we have staffing any correctional facility. And it feels like it really needs to be an all hands on deck approach. I love what you're saying about going where the people are, you know. I remember like back in the day when I was working at BCA, it was like DOL would go to American Legions, you know, try to find people out of the military. Demographics have changed, obviously, but I was hoping you could just give me a picture of what the work with DOL and DOC looks like to try to solve this issue.
For filling correctional officer positions. Okay, I have a few things that I'll talk about. just generally, we produce a weekly jobs newsletter that's distributed to about 20,000 subscribers. You all might be on it because I might have added you all to that list, just so that you can see it, but it highlights 5 jobs from each region, each of our regions of the state, and we have a spot to feature an employer. So just last week, Corrections was our featured employer, again, getting those jobs in front of 20,000 subscribers. Excavation. We also, in the northeast part of the state, the staff have taken a tour of the correctional training facility so that our staff can see what kind of training the correctional officers go through. Why that matters is because it helps us talk to people who might be considering corrections. This is what this experience is like, this is what you're gonna go through. And I'm looking over here at Jen, you've had something else.
Yes, we just had early conversations with corrections in Newport facility. They're gonna table in our American Job Center in Newport, where they're actually gonna table right in our job center, and meet with job seekers as they come in and just engage with them and, you know, inform them about what a job with corrections might look like. That will be happening soon.
And then we host job fairs for all employers, and corrections is always invited and generally is showing up unless something got in the way that prevents them from being there. But the idea being we're highlighting the opportunities and letting people just come through and have conversations about what those jobs look like. So that's an example, some examples of the things that we're currently doing with corrections.
Thank you.
Okay, so just in the interest of time, I'm going to buzz through the right side of the column here. So as Cindy, I'll pick up at the bottom part here. So as Cindy said, we also connect people with training. So we're the apprenticeship registration agency for the state, meaning an employer develops a training program. They document it and send it to us, and we register it because it met a certain set of standards that's established by the federal government, and that system allows for portability across state lines. We have some kinds of programs called pre-apprenticeship, which means it's a preparatory program to get someone to be hired into an apprenticeship. We can talk more about that if you're interested. We're also interested in short-term credentials. So as our friends at Corrections said, they are oriented to work keys, which is part of the National Career Ready credential, which is also a credential that the secondary technical centers prepare students for. So they exit the tech centers with that credential at a minimum. That's something that shows to an employer you have some basic employability skills, that you know theoretically what it is that it takes to show up to work on time and be a good employee. We're interested in all sorts of credentials, including the ones that CCB was talking about, manufacturing. So those are proxies for skill sets to employers, and employers are looking for them and value them when they're searching for workers. On the right-hand side of this slide, I am going to not read all the words to you, but these are the services that we offer both in our job centers, virtually, and out in the community. The way that we work with folks is there's sort of 2 levels. You could walk into a job center, talk to the job center specialist, and they're gonna get you on the computer and help you with job search. They might help you file for unemployment. But they're also gonna be talking to you about what the labor market's like and what kind of occupations are in high demand and what sorts of things pay well. And, oh, you're interested in hospitality and tourism. Well, we have this job fair coming up, and there are all of these employers that are gonna be there. We're trying to provide resources to folks when they come in because nobody likes to search for a job. And it's challenging for some folks to try to figure all of those steps out. We want to make it easy. If you came in and said, well, I'm interested in hospitality and tourism, but I have this work history and I need I'm having trouble putting all the pieces together, then we're going to set you up with a case manager And they're going to be working with you on a plan. So we're going to set goals with you. We're going to do assessments. We're going to sit with you and work through what are all of the things that you need to do to be employable or to get a job in this field that you want to be in. And we're going to start assigning federal resources to support you. That might be tuition for this training you want to be in. It might be that we're reimbursing some costs, or we're giving you a voucher to pay for the uniform that you need, or the steel-toed shoes that you need, or tools. And if we don't have those funds available, we're making referrals to VSAC and some of our other partners. For instance, if you have a disability, we're going to refer you to higher ability. If you don't have a high school diploma, we're going to refer you to Vermont Adult Learning or whichever adult ed provider serves the community you're living in. So we have this network of resources and partners to be able to support people on their employment journey. And also one of the other tools that we have is work-based learning supports. So you might be, you think you're interested in hospitality and tourism. We have an employer that will host you. We will pay your wages for a work experience for up to 8 weeks. And if that employer says, we really like you but we need to train you, then we're going to convert that into an on-the-job training contract where we're going to then reimburse the employer the wages they're paying while they're training you. And so these are all sort of the mechanisms and devices that we have to support people. They're not programs that we're outwardly promoting to people, but these are tools that we would use to support anybody and everybody, including those who are exiting correctional facilities. So I did that real fast, but in the interest of time, I'm going to invite one of our managers up. Jen Palmieri is the regional manager for the Northeast region. And Jen, you can introduce yourself too, but Jen is also has two.
We do have a quick question.
Is there any way to find any data if this is successful? Like what you're doing? Do you have did 3,000 people come through last year and 3,000 people have jobs?
Good question. We have, because all of our work is federally funded, the federal government has performance measures for all the states that are all the same. We have a number of people served, number of people who exited our services. I didn't bring that with me, but
just where I can find it.
Yeah, I can send it to this group if you.
Fantastic, thank you.
So Jen has 2 job centers, Newport and St. Johnsbury, and I'll stop talking for you.
That's okay. I'll be quick. So we,
Just for the record, Jen, name and.
oh, sorry, Jen Palmieri, Regional Manager for the Northeast Kingdom Region, St. Johnsbury and Newport. We started doing what we call enrichment workshops with the Newport Correctional Facility last fall. And like what we talked about earlier, our staff had to have background checks. Once that was completed, we go in, similar to this, we have a PowerPoint that we deliver. It's in a classroom. The residents are very, very respectful, very engaged. A lot of like what Joyce was saying. They ask a lot of great questions. They are sponges that just soak up the information that we're sharing with them. And by going into the facility, our hope is that we're hoping to create a relationship with them where we start to build trust so that once they're released, they know the services that we provide. There's no fee to them, and that we have 11 job centers across the state. So wherever they land, there's going to be an employment and training consultant near them that is eager to help them. And so we just started that in August, and then we went again in November, and we're going to do it quarterly. And this is at the Newport Correctional Facility.
Jen, when someone is released, are they expected to reach out to you, or does someone from your office reach out to them to see where they are? Do they want more help? That type of thing.
Either way, while we're in the facility, we help them create a Vermont Job Link account, and we also help them draft a resume. And so depending on where they land and maybe like their contact information, like if they put their email or phone, that might change. So we, yes, they know they can get a hold of us. They have our contact information, and this is new for us. It started this fall. So we're hopeful that we'll see some positive outcomes, but really just to let them know these services are available to them at no cost, and that we're a friendly face and that we're eager to help them.
So it's really up to the person that's being released to connect with you. You don't hear from DOC that the person has been released, or do you?
Not yet, we haven't, because we just started this in August, and it's some folks that are gonna be released within the next 90 days. And we're not sure where they're gonna, end up. If it will be in the Northeast Kingdom or maybe other parts of the state. Yeah. So this is just a very, very beginner level information sharing of the services that we provide. And the feedback that we've gotten, like I said, the residents are very, very respectful, ask great questions, and they'll say, like, one gentleman said, "So I just go in your office?" And I said, "Yeah, like we have somebody right at the front desk. Sometimes it might even be me, you never know." And you just come in and we'll take it from there. He goes, what do I say? And I just say you want help finding a job. And he's like, okay. So I think, it's like anything, it's that first step. It's difficult. And I feel like if you make that first step happen while they're in the facility, they'll be more likely to engage with us once they're released. So that's like our biggest goal.
I'm just wondering if there's a way of follow-up with, between corrections and the Department of Labor, to be able to follow up with them when they're released, if they haven't followed up with you, if they haven't done it on their own, maybe just another prod that is, we're still here, we want to help you. Come invite them to come in again.
We did this text, and he might be able to speak more because they're a little bit further ahead of us in the process. So that is, what we've just started, and so far it seems to be going well. And like I spoke earlier, we did get a tour of the correctional facility, the correctional training facility in Linneville at the industrial park. We just did that a couple weeks ago, our team, and got to see like the facility and meet with the director and just get a better idea of what that 6 weeks looks like, so that we always refer job seekers to jobs with corrections, but it just helps us better inform them of that. And so we've done that, and like Jay said, their jobs are featured in Vermont Job Link. They were the featured employer in our weekly newsletter. Oh, I did want to mention, just because I was afraid I would forget, we talked about when you were talking about the summits that we did. So we have what we call NEQ Workforce Partners. We do meet every 2 weeks virtually on Microsoft Teams, and that is all of the community partners. So like Department of Labor, Hireability, CCB, Adult Education, Northeast Kingdom Learning Services, Probation and Parole, Northeast Kingdom Human Services, VSAC. We all meet every 2 weeks and just do an info sharing, like if there's training that's happening. We have guest speakers that come in. We had Northeast Kingdom Learning Services talk about their Step Up Healthcare program that's going to be launching in March. And so we do that. We meet every 2 weeks for 1 hour and just share, what's going on in our community, how can we support one another. So not a big, large summit, but it is online, and we just keep the communication flowing.
Is that something that Department of Labor kind of takes charge of and sets that up?
It is actually Labor that does that. So Hireability and but I would say there's like key stakeholders we are with them. And we also put on the big large fair, job fairs, anything workforce partners. That's not.
Just wondering if there's a way to replicate that around the state, or if we are doing that.
Yeah, those meetings that Hireability and Labor organize, workforce partner meetings do happen in the state.
Great.
You want to just share?
Oh, okay. So I had the opportunity to attend a reentry simulation at the Federal Correctional Facility in Berlin, New Hampshire, back in 2024. If anybody ever has an opportunity to attend one of those, should. It's absolutely fascinating. And that is a very large federal correctional facility. At that time, they had 785 inmates roughly. And so it was in a big it looked like a big empty cafeteria, kind of just empty. They had all of the inmates sitting in the middle of the room, and then tables set up all around the perimeter. And the tables, each table represented a different service provider in the community. So I see some head shaking, you guys.
DOC ran one last year for us at the hotel, and it was one of the most frustrating things we've all ever.
Okay, so you got to go.
Yes, we did.
It's fascinating.
Yes.
And I've worked with, with folks of all walks of life for years, and it just was like an aha moment for me. And one takeaway for me is that, we have terminology, like 3 squares, which is food stamps, food benefits, hireability, folk rehab. Every state has different terminology, and the residents there were like, what? We were speaking a different language. They're just like, what does that even mean? This is federal, so they're from all over the United States. But they said it would be really helpful if we could mobilize services somehow, if we could have an app, so that wherever they land, that they could see that all the services around them and how to locate them, how to access them. So that was very interesting. And the inmates asked the same questions. They said, I had no idea that you provide these services. And there were representatives from all of New England at this reentry simulation. And the inmates were just like, I had no idea that you offered these services, that there was no charge. And, one gentleman said, I can't keep coming back to prison. I just can't. So I'm glad you had the opportunity to attend that. It was very impactful.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Next up, we have Dean Matwicha, who is the regional manager of our Southeast region, which includes Springfield and Brattleboro. And Dean and his team are sort of ahead of the rest of our regional job centers in the work with corrections. So he has a few more illustrative examples.
So good morning. Thank you, Chairman, and the committee for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Dean Matwicha. I'm the regional manager for the workforce development team in the Southeast region of the state. I'll just start with saying that jobs save lives and make communities safer. Can you imagine a situation where a justice affected individual was preparing for re-entry into the community and they had stable employment waiting for them? Let me tell you a story about that. Our team worked with an individual with the DOC, partnered with the DOC and the Department of Labor, and we worked with such a situation. This individual was incarcerated just prior to completing his electrician's apprenticeship. He needed to complete the apprenticeship, but he wasn't able to take his journeyman's exam, and his hours were due to expire before he was released. Our team worked with this individual. Our teams, the Department of Corrections and the Department of Labor, worked with this individual. We were able to enroll him in the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. This is the federal grant that my team has been talking about. And we were able to support him to take his test while he was incarcerated. The Department of Labor provided free vocational education support to help him take his practice exam, and additionally provided financial supports to help him take his licensing exam. We met this individual through our quarterly enrichment workshops, which helps us to build relationships and connections with all of the individuals that are preparing for reentry within 6 to 9 months. So I'll get into a little bit of, you've learned about the what we do. I'm going to tell you, and you know about the why, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of how we do it from our region. Through labor on location activities that our team has talked about, we helped him create a resume, retool his resume, help provide interviewing skills, mock interviews, discuss training options that are subsidized through EOA, and help them work towards garnering an industry-recognized credential. Through our work with the Department of Corrections, our team was able to arrange a connection with a local electrician, and this individual was offered a job upon release. So while we provide these services to all Vermonters, especially those with those that are considered priority populations, like justice-affected individuals, I'll say that it creates safer communities. It's more efficient use of tax dollars. However, there is work that is needed to bring this to scale. Basically, we ultimately create and cultivate relationships with these individuals as they prepare for reentry. This provides an opportunity to provide a warm handoff anywhere in the state that they may be released. We've talked about, Jay has talked about the things that we provide as far as labor on location. All of these services we provide inside the facility. Through extensive work with the DOC, our team has a very unique situation where we have access to the DOC. We go in there on a quarterly basis with our other partner agencies like ICANN and other human agencies like Hireability and Adult Ed, providing information on all of our services. We then go in on a monthly basis to provide labor on location services to help them do all of these things. Now, what we just started recently doing was launching, if you can believe this, a job fair inside of a corrections facility. Imagine that, right? I mean, it's pretty interesting. So we pulled one off last August with the help of the DOC. And through our close work, we're going to be hosting and pulling another one off in February. So with the hopes that with justice-affected individuals that are going to be leaving incarceration and approaching reentry within 6 to 9 months, we can provide them with all of the tools to prepare for these events and then arrive at the event and then have an opportunity to cultivate an employment opportunity with these local employers. And I'll let you know that we also do provide some partner agencies that come to these events that will help provide some services. The commissioner talked a little bit about bonding, okay? We'll have our bonding person there. We'll also be able to talk about the work opportunity tax credit. So this is something that our team can talk to the justice affected people, we'll say the job seeker in this situation, as well as the employer on site. And then we'll have our partners there that talk about opportunities and resources that are available as they approach reentry. 802 Vermont is a resource that we use, and the Mover is a resource we use, because these participants may not necessarily have reliable transportation. I'll just say, I'll finish with saying that this work is important to the future of Vermont because jobs save lives and make communities safer.
On track.
Can you say more about the job fairs and how easy or difficult it was to get employers to go to those job fairs and how many employers showed up and like, do you have a target number in the future?
Sure. So at our first job fair, we had 5 employers and we had 4 agencies. It took a little bit of, we're working on affecting the stigma and blowing up the stigma around corrections and justice affected people. So in advance of that, for this event, the team at the DOC at the Southern State Corrections Facility has been kind enough to provide the employers with the opportunity to take a tour of the facility prior to the event, on the day we're having the event. And our team is also meeting with these employers virtually and in person prior to the event to have meetings to discuss what their concerns might be and how we can create a workaround for that. The second part of your answer to your question is, it was challenging. I mean, it's, initially very difficult, but thankfully with some of our employers that we work with, they are willing to hire justice affected people as a second chance employer.
So those at the job fair that you had, you had at Southern State, so were those employers more from Springfield, Rockingham, or was it further out?
Great question. So our target for these job fairs is to provide a few statewide employers. An example might be Casella Waste Management or Rhino Foods or Sodexo.
Okay.
Okay, so they're across the state because, as you know, not everyone is going to be released to the southeast area of the state. We also provided some local employers in the southeast region that were able to provide opportunities so that they can make connections for the people that are being released locally.
We had some questions. Gina, and then.
Have you thought about a way to make this scalable to small employers? Like, I have a small cleaning company, I employ maybe 5 to 7 people at any given time. I've had a good number of folks that have been involved with corrections that have worked for me, and they're great people and need second chances. And I think that if you could reach out to a lot of smaller employers too, and figure out a way to scale that, then it can be really helpful. Because it's not necessarily the company that can give you 50 job openings, but the company that can give you one that needs one person. And it's a great labor force. It's untapped. Not untapped, but it could be.
Well, it is true, working with this largely untapped labor pool, we're trying our best, small team, small but mighty, in trying to cultivate additional more relationships with employers. So while I did mention that we included statewide employers like Sodexo, Casella Waste Management, for example, Rhino Foods, we do have some other small employers like Lawrence and Lober Electric as an example.
I'm thinking like small companies, so like, look at the contractors registry, pull all the emails from all the people that are on the contractors registry and shoot them an email.
That is a fantastic selection. That's a fantastic suggestion. And we are working our way through the list that we've got.
Yeah, absolutely. You're doing great work.
Thank
I
you.
think the opportunity, so we're starting small here, and I think we want to be able to replicate this work. And so as we start to expand out, that would be where we're going to reach out and connect with more employers. And we are changing the way that we're doing the external kind of facing job fairs. And so I'm very happy to talk to you about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be a great time.
That mostly answered my question.
Kevin?
Curious as to whether you have any idea, rough order of magnitude of what percentage of individuals don't take advantage of all these opportunities that you have in private for 2 hours. I would consider those individuals at risk. If they don't avail themselves of all this good information and help, I'm wondering if DOC has got some kind of awareness first of all, and then action plan. Because if they don't have housing, if they don't have health, if they don't have employment, everybody's at risk.
Yeah, I just was looking, we serve 92 people who are justice involved, just this in this last calendar year. And I think our services are voluntary, right? So we're not trying to keep anything a secret. We're out there promoting, and I think just people aren't paying attention, or they think it's not for them. And I think when Jen was up here talking, it's a surprise. Oh, there's a place that I can go and people will help me search for a job. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there, and I think it's also a matter of pride. There's a member of my family who, you know what I do, but
will not go into a job center and doesn't want to work with anyone to improve their life. And so I think the challenge is, how do we help people see that this is for everyone and we want to serve as many people as possible, and it's for you, and it's for you, it's for you, and any of your constituents, but how do we get more people in? I think it's the challenge that we face.
So maybe my question should have been to DOC. Put the nice spin on it, but if only half of the people who are being released take advantage of all of these services, what are we doing about the ones that don't? You can't force a horse to drink. Nope. You know, but at least to be aware and then have some kind of follow-up that says, yeah, we're aware.
So-
and you're not the people necessarily to answer that question, but.
Yes, and I can speak to that a bit from my team's perspective. As we work very closely with the DOC, how do I say this? Word has gotten out. So we are cultivating this history and it's generating additional interest. Now, I think that the longer that we do this, the more interest will be generated and the more participants we can capture.
So along those lines, I know we're running out of time. It would be lovely to understand when these programs started, how long they've been going, and some of the learnings that you've had from them. And as you're talking about this job fair, and I know how much data collection you do, I'm just curious what that loop that you've set up is to learn about what's working, what's not working, what are the training materials that we need to focus more energy on, right? All of those things. And I know we're out of time, but just we see each other a lot.
You're gonna ask me about it when I come to your committee.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, those are good questions, and this is really early work, and the Dean's region is ahead by about 2 years.
2 years, but really 10 months of intensive work. I mean, if you're a human, you'd be right about your gestation period right now. I mean, that's where we're at. So it's very new.
And then the last thing is we're in such a, we don't have enough jobs for the people, we don't have enough people for the jobs that we have in the state. If we ever get to the point where we do actually have a population with enough people for the jobs, I would hope that we don't stop focusing on these programs, because these are the programs that change people's lives. And that is what we need to do as government, is change people's lives for the better. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you.
So I have one off the wall question. So the folks that you've worked with today, has there been any issue with their identification? Has there been any issues with their ID? Be honest about it.
The short answer is, with the people that we have worked with, that we've enrolled in the WIOA program, no. However, we do have issues with identification, birth certificate, social security card, all the great stuff that you need on your I-9.
That they don't have.
And, but I think that the DOC team is working really hard to try to make that happen. And we're also trying really hard to make that happen through our other partner agencies. In the event that these things are not, they're not able to obtain them prior to release.
And that's pretty common. Some folks don't even know where they were born. Some folks don't even have a clue about a social security number or even how to access it. And that is the stumbling block to even getting to an ID. And I just wanted to put that on the table, because we just assume that everyone who's incarcerated is like us, where we know where to go, we have all that information, and that is not the case. And I just want to put that on the table for folks to start understanding this.
That really speaks to our ability to provide referral services, to help provide the pathways for them to obtain those credentials.
Also, just to highlight too, the work that agencies and individuals have to do to get information across state lines is, I'm going through it right now. It's very hard.
note that we have a staff person who is going to testify on Zoom, but I think in the interest of time, we're going to need to not do that. So I will just make my closing remark, which is the takeaway here is that we're not done. There's a lot of opportunities for us to continue to grow in the relationship with corrections in all of their facilities. And the work that our team has talked to you about today is the sample of the work that we intend to do with corrections. And I appreciate the questions that you've all asked that highlight some areas where we need to put our thinking caps on to improve that connection even more. So thank you for holding this joint hearing and for inviting us all in to talk about the good work that we're doing to support justice affected individuals as they exit our correctional facilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you, and Deputy Commissioner. It's good to see our departments working together. This is something that we've, I think, talked about for a long time. And it's good to see that things are moving in a good direction. So thank you, appreciate it. All the work that everybody does on both corrections and Department of Labor. So with that, I think we can